50, 60 years perhaps, maybe a little, I don't know the exact timeline in terms of accurately when it started, but roughly around this period is when you have the Fatimid dynasty starting up in Egypt. But you have Ithna Asharis in Egypt. You have Ithna Asharis in Egypt at the time. One person comes from Egypt in search of the next Imam. The 11th Imam, what happened? He's martyred. 12th Imam, next Imam, he is sent to Mecca. When he goes there in search of the Imam, this is where this particular line we have here comes into the picture. They are sent to the mother of the 11th Imam, and she is the go-to person, the face of. There's a conversation between another person and this particular Shia that is looking for the 12th Imam, and they are told to refer to the mother of the 11th Imam. And they basically, that individual, that Shia from Egypt, asks, how can I refer and believe in an Imam whose wasi, in other words, their heir, I guess, the person to refer to, the person I'm supposed to refer to if I want to follow them after their demise, or while they're alive, but I'm not going to access them. Their wasi is a woman. They have an issue with that. Now that itself, if it's based in the belief and the knowledge and the understanding that the 12 Imams are males, then that could be a positive thing. He's like, okay, the Imams are not going to be females. We know that. Not that there's anything against females. We just know the Imams are going to be men. Okay, so how is this? But because it's talking about wasi, not imamah, there seems to be something other than that knowledge. I didn't take that comment very positively. But anyhow, this the person who is engaged, I'm not sure if it was the aunt of the imam or one other female. It's a female that's having this conversation, if I remember correctly, with this Shia. He says, she says that she is the wasi and the go-to person if you want your 12th Imam, in the same way. This is what clarifies something that I know of the history of the Ahlul Bayt prior to this period. In the same way that Zainab was the go-to person, the face of, the spokesperson for, the go-to person in the case of the Imamah of Imam Zayn al-Abidin. In the first couple of months after the Shahada of Imam al-Hussein, all the way to Sham, Imam Zayn al-Abidin is not in the spotlight. Zainab is. Now, the part that was interesting, and it clarified that particular part of history, is that this, again, the female that's having this conversation with the Shia from Egypt is one of the family members and knowledgeable people within the family of the Imam. I forget that detail. I don't want to say if this was the aunt of the Imam. It was one of those figures that said this, and it made it clear this is inside information from the household of Imamah, that it didn't just happen that, okay, Imam Zayn al-Abidin was not feeling well and Zainab salamullahi alayha was feeling well and she just happened to speak here and there and you see her. No, that is what she was told to do. It was planned. Imam Zayn al-Abidin had Zainab salamullahi alayha be in the spotlight and take charge while he's the Imam, and for her to be the one that is seen and more active. That's, for me, that was enlightening. It was different than just reading in history, okay, Zainab is heard, she gave a sermon here. No, this was planned by the Imams. A task, a position was given to Zainab salamullahi alayha. Not that she just happened to just be there. And anyhow, so one of those figures that is, now why is this happening? When you see that comparison that is made, and we get this from the household of Imamah, it makes it clear what the purpose of this is. Again, it is part of the process of concealing and hiding and protecting the 12th Imam, the identity of the 12th Imam. One thing I didn't write here, you all probably have heard this yourselves, but I want to mention it in this context, but I can't really place it and say this is what the deputies did or whatever. We're going to get to the deputies or the Imam himself did. The decision was made by the Imam. So maybe it was supposed to be in the previous slide. An example of this process of concealing the identity and hiding the Imam from the authorities. What is that? It's the decision not to share the first name of the 12th Imam. Okay. I don't know if you've heard or not. We all know today, for sure, it's common knowledge, the name of the 12th Imam is, it's not Mahdi. Mahdi is his title, Muhammad. Muhammad is his first name. Okay. He has the same name of the Prophet. Awwaluna Muhammad, akhiruna Muhammad. Okay. The last Imam is Muhammad. The first of the 14 Ma'sumin is Muhammad. The last of them is also Muhammad. Salamullah alayhim ajma'in. But that name, while we have it in some of the earlier hadith at the time of perhaps Imam al-Sadiq and so on and so forth, the previous Imams, at this point in time, it's not common knowledge what the first name of the Imam is. So when the existence of the Imam, the birth of the Imam is being shared, those, specifically I'll share an account of I believe it's the second deputy. Someone asked him of seeing the 12th Imam and what have you. And then he asked the name of the Imam. Can I know the name? The Imam says no. The deputy says no. That is what we've been ordered and commanded not to speak of, because that a couple of accounts say the same thing. Because if there is a name and everybody speaks of the name, it will create suspicion with the authorities, and they will start thinking there is someone, and they'll start searching in order to prevent the authorities to realize there is someone that they need to look for. The name of the Imam is one which should not be mentioned. This is in the earlier days of the minor occultation. It's not something you find, let's say, from the last couple of deputies. I don't want to say they changed the policy then and said, okay, now everybody mention that, everybody talk about it. I haven't seen that. However, the emphasis that you don't talk about the name, I'm not even going to share, as the deputy of the Imam, I'm not even going to share the name, the first name of the Imam. They've explained what the purpose of that is. That is part of keeping the identity of the Imam hidden. This, what we have, the first line, one of the other players, one of the other people involved in this, as amongst those who are working under the Imam, for the Imam, in line with the Imam, is the mother of the 11th Imam. It's the decision of the 11th and 12th Imam that the person, whoever wants to see the Imam, or wants to talk to the Imam, get something to the Imam, ask questions about the Imam, go to Mecca to the grandmother of the Imam, the mother of the 11th Imam. One other thing related to this that I think is important is, at this time, this is the period of time that the first deputy is supposed to be the first deputy. Okay, this is, as we always focus about on there being 4 deputies, 4 na'ibs of the 12th Imam. Well, this is missed. Before the na'ibs become the go-to people, there's a period that they're not supposed to be the go-to people. Attention is drawn to Mecca as opposed to Samirra. Okay. And to the mother of the 11th Imam. Be it that, as we've said, it apparently is for a couple of months only. It's not something that was there for too long of a period, but this is the initial stage of referring to someone else. It starts with the mother of the 11th Imam. So referring to the first deputy is the first deputy. He's got certain tasks, but in terms of him being the one that people are referred to, no, it's the mother of the 11th Imam that people are referred to, and eventually that transitions into referring to the first deputy. The second bullet point we have is regarding the first deputy. Uthman ibn Saeed Al-Aamri, this is the first deputy, that's his full name. The first deputy we've written here was the one who established the office of imamah in this period. That requires a little, what is the office of Imam mean? What we're intending by this is, during the period of the occultation, there's supposed to be an establishment that represents the Imam, and that's generally called the office, right? So even today, you have something called the office of your marja. So if you want to go to your marja, what do? Whether you want to meet him, you want to send khoms, you want to ask questions, whatever you want to do, the door, the gate to, the way you connect to that marja is the office. Okay, that's the reference point. That's why we use the term office. Otherwise, you're not going to find that in any, like the Arabic equivalent, which is maktab or maktabah, is not found in any of the accounts. We're talking about, we're referring to this position that these deputies have, and then in a certain way it continues into the major occultation. We're calling this an office, all right? A reference point for the Shia. The Imam cannot be referred to during the occultation. He, as we elaborated last night, chose to make himself seen, or he appeared for people, met people, spoke to them, gave gifts to people, gave sadaqah to people, did various things, showed miracles. That's him deciding to, when he wants, on his term, whoever he wants, see, come in contact with, and so on and so forth. But if somebody wants to see the Imam, you don't have that option. What are you going to do? You go to the office. Okay. Establishing an office amongst the Shia where they realize this is the go-to place, this is done by the first deputy. Mind you, his position as the first deputy only lasted for a couple or a few years. We don't have the exact date of the demise of the first deputy. We don't have that, unfortunately. And the bulk of the time of the minor occultation falls under the responsibility of the second deputy, his son, Muhammad ibn Uthman ibn Saeed Al-Aamri, who passed away in the early 4th century. Okay, so most of the period between probably around 262, 263, which is when the father passes on, up to 300, 305, perhaps 310, I don't know, I don't remember the exact, but it's in the early 4th century. That period is the period of the niyabah, or responsibility of the second deputy. But establishing that office is the work of the first deputy. We said the Imam, it's under his guidance. Yesterday we talked about him creating this. Sure, he created this, but the one that he put in charge to do this practically is Uthman ibn Saeed Al-Aamri. And under the guidance of the Imam, he was blessed with being able to do a very good job at this. By the end of his life, it was established in the Shia community that there is a reference point to speak to the Imam. It was known. Not necessarily by every single person, but if somebody had questions, if somebody didn't know, it was easy to find out. As opposed to the early stages, at the beginning of his responsibility, the Shia generally were clueless. What in the world is going on? What do we do? Who do we go to? Jafar is claiming at one point he is the Imam, the brother of the 11th Imam. He's claiming that he's the Imam. At another point he's claiming that he's a deputy of the Imam. And then there's all these other people that are claiming to be a deputy of the Imam. So there's a period that people are wondering who's the Imam. It becomes clear there is an Imam that you can't see. Then, okay, there's a deputy. Who is the deputy? These different people are popping up here and there. He's the deputy, the other person is the deputy. It is the job of the first deputy to make it clear there is an office and he is that office. And by the way, I said you can't find the word maktab. There is one word that is constantly used to refer to that the person that we called the position of that person, the office. The person is referred to as bab, okay? The door, the gate. Okay. You want to see the Imam? The gate to the Imam is, the word bab is used. Okay. That is a title that is used, but we refer to the position, we call it an office. Anyhow, by the end of the life of the first deputy, it is clear amongst the Shia enough so that if someone doesn't know, all they have to do is ask. It's pretty clear. It's not in doubt. It's not a matter you don't know. It's like somebody, for example, going to Najaf. Okay, where's the office of Al-Sistani? You just ask. Everybody says it's over there. Everybody knows who it is. And this became common knowledge amongst the Shia by then. He established that. So they trusted this person. They came to know who it is. They trusted that there is an imam that they're not going to see unless he chooses to see them. All those points became relatively established in the Shia community through the continuous work of this particular deputy, Uthman ibn Saeed Al-Aamri. During the period of the second deputy, he solidified the office. Okay. The position of there being an office is solidified. What does that mean? We said by the end of the life of the first deputy, everybody knew there is an office and who that person is. Solidifying the office, I hope I can explain this well. Solidifying the office is establishing that position for the imam in the long run. Okay. People coming to know that there is an imam that they're not going to see, and this is the person to go to currently is one thing. But knowing that this is going to be the process, get used to it, is another thing. And that this office is here to stay. You're not going to see your imam, and you're going to continuously, or you're going to continue to have a place of reference. This is something that happens during the time of the second deputy. In what ways, what measures are taken for this? There's probably a number of them. I don't know if I know every single. The ones I have picked up on, and I can share with you some of the things that were done during this time by the second deputy. One thing are all the conversations, letters back and forth that people had. Ulama coming, you have ulama from Qom traveling over there to Baghdad and staying there, some for a period of time, some for just changing their residence from Qom or Ray, which we have ulama in both those cities. They transferred over to Baghdad. They stayed there. They lived there. They continued their life there. They didn't move back. This continued relationship, the questions being asked, getting responses that made it clear it's from the imam. All the questions that were being asked by ulama and others about him actually seeing the imam, describing the imam, constantly hearing that, to solidify this belief and this understanding, not just practically, but this belief and this understanding that this is the case. It requires time for this to be established in the subconscious of a community, which we call the community of the Shia, right? Across the Islamic empire. For this to become very clear, especially since this is taking time, right? There's a time where you don't see your imam for a day, for 2 days, for a week, for 2 weeks, a month, 2 months. And then you're also told, by the way, based on the hadith that we have from Imam Sallallahu, okay, the coming of the imam is near. Okay, don't look at us. We've been away for over 1,000 years. These are the people right at the beginning of it. Okay, it's near. All right, well, maybe next year, maybe the second year, maybe the third year, maybe the fifth year. 40 years goes by. 40 years goes by. 30 years goes by. And so it becomes more, there's more questions. Is this real? Are we really, did you guys really see the imam? They trust them, right? But questions come. And they ask, by Allah, did you see the imam? He said, yes. Where did you see imam? Here. What did he say? This is what he said. Okay. These conversations one thing that happens during this period that solidifies this, that the Imam is there but is in hiding and you're not going to see him. And this is the place of reference. And it's going to continue like this as long as this takes. When is the end? We don't know, but this is going to be the case. We're going to keep doing this. There's another thing that happens during this period, which is that recite a salawat, please. The idea of this ghaiba and this occultation not being a short one while you're supposed to be expecting it. Remember, there are a number of hadith, the ulama of Qawm, now that the occultation has begun, they look back at the hadith they have, you find hadith of the Imams talking about from the time of the Prophet, the hadith that intidharul faraj, afdalul ibadah, intidharul faraj, one of the best worships is to await the coming of the Imam. You are anxious and you are expecting and you're awaiting this thing to happen, which is the return of the Imam. And those who are from the generation that experienced the presence of the 11th Imam, or perhaps even the 10th Imam, they were in their 20s and the Imam went into occultation. They have experienced in their earlier ages, in their teens, the presence of the 10th Imam, then the 11th Imam, okay, because a 20-year-old could have, while they're 10, 11, 12, and we had some who were students. We have a companion of the 6th Imam, I believe, yes, 6th Imam, Hassan ibn Mahbub. Hassan ibn Mahbub, as a child, he was writing hadith, as a child. Okay, child means probably somewhere around 10-ish, a little younger, a little older, but around 10-ish would be referred to as a child in our hadith, that would literate writing hadith. Okay, there's a long story regarding Hassan ibn Mahbub. So if you have someone who's 20, they could have experienced, they could have known as someone at the age of 10, 11 about the 10th Imam, and then in a couple of years the 11th Imam, they've experienced it. Or if they're a little older, they're 30. So they know what that felt like, what that was like. Now you don't see the Imam, you don't know where the Imam is. Okay, and then you read all these hadith, you go back to, okay, it's near, it's near. You're expecting, how far is this going to, can we expect in the next year or two? One of the preparations to solidify this idea, the whole idea of the office, you need an office when the Imam is going to be there, but you're not going to have access. This is the gate, this is the door, this is what you will have access to. This idea, in order for it to be solidified in the long run, as we said, is for the people to now start to hear, look, expect it to be near, but also know it's not going to be as near as you think. Now, how far, that's something, كَذَبَ الْوَقَّاتُونَ. We have a number of hadith. Anyone who sets a time is a liar. You can't set any time for it. You're not supposed to set any time. Nobody knows the exact time. But from this point, it starts coming out that, okay, this is not something that's temporary. This is going to take a long time. This is going to take a long time to get used to. This and probably other measures that are taken by that deputy to solidify the office. The third deputy, we've said purified, and I need to explain what this exactly means. What does the purification of the office means? In order to explain that, I need to first elaborate a little more on the office. The reason why we chose the word office is not just because, well, you know, the comparison between the office of the marja today and our understanding of how, if you want to go to the marja, you go to the office. It's not only that. The other reason for it is when you talk about an office, you're not talking about one person. Okay. It could be led by a person, but it's not one person. And that's what we mean. The office of the Imam is not going to be one person. It's led by one person, but it's not one person. Especially in the beginning of the major occultation, as we get to the last slide, and we'll cover some topics or some points regarding that. It's not going to be one person specifically at all for at least a good amount of time. You're not going to have one person. You're going to have a few people here, you're going to have a few people there. All of them are the office of the Imam. The term na'ib, if you've looked at, I don't think we have too many people here that have studied fiqh, but as a discipline. So if you go back to the works of Sheikh Saduq, Sheikh Mufid, which are, Sheikh Mufid is the first major figure in fiqh that we see post, at least I should say, well the major figure that we have work from post major occultation, the beginning of the major occultation, that again we're aware of his views and we have works, we have books from him. So I'm not suggesting we didn't have jurists or faqihs during the time of the Imam or during the minor occultation. The problem is we don't have their works, if they even wrote anything. The earliest we have, sure, Sheikh Saduq has works, but he's not a faqih, he's a muhaddith. Okay, there's a difference between the two. I don't want to get into that right now. The first jurist, faqih, the first work of fiqh that we have is Sheikh Mufid. Then you have Sheikh Al-Tusi. Sheikh Al-Mufid in Baghdad. He has, one of his books is Al-Muqni'ah. Okay. Al-Muqni'ah is one of the works of Sheikh Al-Mufid. From those early, the reason why I'm referring to this scholar is that this term is not something that was coined by the jurists of the later periods. Fresh out of the minor occultation, the ulama, the mujtahideen, those who know the words of the Ahlul Bayt, those who have studied them, that's their field, with the other qualifications of taqwa and so on and so forth, they all referred to them based on their understanding, correct understanding. It was common understanding. It came down, or it came out of the minor occultation. They referred to them as what? Anyone know? Na'ib of the Imam. The term Na'ib of the Imam, we refer to the four during the minor occultation. The common understanding of ulama coming out of the minor occultation is that mujtahideen are nawab of the Imam. Generally, that term is used frequently. This is what we mean by office. During the time of the deputies in Baghdad, the first, second deputy didn't function alone, didn't do things by themselves. They had other people with them. In fact, some of the figures we said traveled from Qum or Ray to Baghdad. They became assistants to the deputy. They were part of the office. The figurehead that is appointed by the Imam, known by everyone, is that person is appointed by the Imam directly, is the deputy. Okay, but there's other people that are working there. Now that we have other people in the picture, purification of the office is going to start making sense to us. Hopefully I can do this in a not too long, so it won't take too long. The third deputy, Hussein ibn Ruh al-Nawbakhti, Al-Hussein ibn Ruh al-Nawbakhti, obviously he's the na'ib, he doesn't need purification, he's already at a level where the Imam has selected him. There's an interesting thing regarding that as well. Hussein ibn Ruh al-Nawbakhti was actually, during the time of the second deputy, was not the top person under the second deputy as seen by others. There was another figure, I forget his name, Sheikh Al-Tusi has it in his book of Al-Ghaibah. There's another person that is a close associate of the second deputy. Everyone thought that person is going to be the third deputy. On his deathbed, that person sat by the head of the second deputy, Muhammad ibn Uthman ibn Saeed. He sat there because of his, he wasn't expecting anything. It's just naturally because he was that close to him, he sat there. Then on his deathbed, Muhammad ibn Uthman ibn Saeed said that the next na'ib is Hussein ibn Ruh, who was sitting by the feet of the second deputy on his deathbed. As soon as he heard that, he got up. Look at this is taqwa. This is real taqwa. He got up. He went to Hussein ibn Ruh. You sit here. Nobody gets the wrong impression. Okay, you got to sit here. You have to have the prime location here. He didn't have any thoughts of, no, I need to be this, or get upset or whatever. While it was clear, a lot of people, it was clear to them, if anyone from the office is going to be this guy, because he's very close, he's been working closer with whatever projects he's been involved with, this is the guy. Well, he doesn't choose. Who chooses? The 12th Imam. The 12th Imam says, Hussein ibn Ruh. As soon as he hears that, he doesn't object, he doesn't question, nothing. He just gets up and goes down and says, you need to go and sit there. That's your position from this point on. And he becomes, okay. Now, Hussein ibn Ruh becomes the third deputy. When he becomes the third deputy in his office, he brings someone in by the name of Abu al-Azaqir al-Shalmaghani. Okay? Abu al-Azaqir al-Shalmaghani. I'm not sure what his background is. I always found that to be a very weird name. Both of those are not very common. That's the only time I come across both those titles. It's not similar, resembling anything else that I've... Anyhow, this guy apparently seemed to be very intelligent and very knowledgeable of hadith and a lot of different things. So he's brought in, he does work. One of the things that's given to him is the task, I think I mentioned this yesterday, the task of putting together a book that provides guidance to the Shia in regards to their practical laws. And when I hear that, it reminds me of something called Tawdih al-Masal, or Risala, basically. It's like the first Risala that was actually compiled. The third deputy tells his assistant that I want you to compile this. And so he gets involved in that. And then the book that gets distributed, apparently some of the accounts say he was the assistant of the third deputy only for 2 years. During these 2 years, he starts going astray. And what he does is the following. It's really, it's fascinating to read these, how people go astray in terms of what they do, because the motives, why he went astray, I really don't know that. But clearly there was problems in this guy. He was seen as knowledgeable, very smart, intelligent, capable. He put all that work together very accurately. It was sent to Qom, check it with your hadith. Is it accurate? They said, except for one instance, everything's accurate. But then he wanted recognition for himself. That's the problem. Well, you can spot that. Why did that develop in him? I don't know. But he did want that, for sure. He started telling people these weird things regarding the deputies. He started telling people that the first deputy was the, I'm not sure what, the soul of, I think, the second deputy I can remember more precisely. He said that, because the second deputy is not alive, no longer alive, right? You can say whatever you want, pretty much. The second deputy was the, I guess, Amir al-Mu'mineen coming back into flesh. The soul of Amir al-Mu'mineen was in the body of the second deputy. Actually said that. And a person who was alive, the soul of Fatima al-Zahra is in the body of the daughter of the second deputy, who's alive at this point. So the account says the daughter of the second deputy, the people who were influenced by this person most, were Al-Bastam. They're referred to as Al-Bastam. And remember yesterday I said the Nusayris formed in this period. It seems some have said they formed in this period. There's reason for it, and this is it. This story is the beginning of this weird, spiritual, no ahkam type of sect created, an offshoot, a splinter group that happens here at this point through Abu al-Azaqir al-Shalmaghani. Al-Bastam in Baghdad, they are influenced. The daughter of the second deputy happens to visit them. When she enters, they fall down in prostration. They start prostrating. She is confused. Like, what are you doing? Get up. What is this? They said, no. We have to do this. Why? They said, no, we've been told that you will deny this. Look at the language, how they do these, play these tricks. We are told you're going to deny this. What is it? So the soul of Fatima al-Zahra is... He said, what are you talking about? I know who I am. This is not, we were told you're going to deny it. See the way, the tricks that are played. So they remained firm on their belief. Al-Bastam split off of Ithna Ashari. They went that direction. How they got further influence, I don't have any further details. This is pretty much the couple of accounts that talk about this. It is clear that there's a number of accounts regarding Ash-Shalmaghani and him after being the assistant of the third representative or deputy of the 12th Imam, and he is kicked out of the office. And then the third deputy starts telling people that, or people start asking him, because they start saying that he needs to be cursed, he's mal'oon, he's a deviant, to clarify. And this is a side point, for anyone who thinks that if anybody wears this or is known as a scholar, which is whatever they do, nobody should speak ill of them. These are signs that is not the case. If they go astray, they brought that ill upon themselves, and it is the responsibility of the office of the Imam, who during the major occultation will be ulama. It's their responsibility to expose, like in this case, la'an was there. You're supposed to do la'an. The purpose of that is for people to disassociate. Like, no, we're not going to go this way. Okay. And it became such an issue that the same book that under the authority of the third deputy was compiled as a risala, people started coming to him, but we have his book, what should we do with the book? He says, the accountant says, the book is, in my words, is prior to his deviation. The writing is one thing, his view, his beliefs, and his teachings now is a different thing. Keep the book, that's fine, but don't follow him. Okay. Purifying the office of the 12th Imam, this instance is not simply in one account in history that we read. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but there's a process of purifying this. We call it the institution of the Hawza, although that title isn't used, but that's what we know it today as. Ulama, then training the next generation of ulama, and so we call that the Hawza. There's a whole process from its establishment at the time of Imam Sadiq Salamullah alayhi, in purifying this. And those instances, one of them is the Waqifi movement that was led by corrupt ulama, deviated people, and the 8th Imam was involved in bringing the Shia back on the right tracks. Not just the 8th Imam, 8th, 9th, 10th Imam. The Waqifis died out somewhere around this period, roughly. During the minor occultation onwards, it appears we don't have any more Waqifis. It took that long to get rid of that fitna that was started by a number of corrupt ulama and representatives of, and the office of the Imam in the presence of the Imams, not in the occultation. There's a couple of stages of that, but this stage of it in the minor occultation is very important because this is very close to the end of the minor occultation, and it's teaching the office, which refers to, as we will see, to the ulama, pious ulama. It said, you are responsible to keep this institution and this office pure. The pious ulama need to make sure this office remains pure. If anyone tries to represent the 12th Imam, not necessarily by saying, I am the representative of the 12, I heard him say this, and then start taking, no, not necessarily. Even if they just say, Islam says this, Islam says that, they start deviating people, like in the case of Al-Shalmaghani. It is the responsibility of the office itself to keep itself pure by making sure they let people know and expose those who are not pure that seem to be part of the office. They need to kick them out and purify them. This is the third deputy, the major event that's related to the occultation, especially the major occultation during his time is this. Otherwise, there's a couple other really interesting things. I think I'm going to come back to him when we get to the next slide. But what he did, one major event that takes place during the period of responsibility of the second and third deputy is this. The last deputy is a summary somebody is a representative or a deputy for a very short period of time. It's 1 or 2 years, very, very short period of time. The longest time we said is the second deputy. The first deputy was a couple, 3 years maybe. Then the third deputy about 10 or so, maybe 15 years. Second longest period. Then the last deputy is like 1 or 2 years. Not much, not even 2 full years if I remember. A very, very short period. And there was a time where I was wondering what the significance of this short period is. Why have a fourth deputy if it's only going to be that long? Okay. And from the signs, the answer that I found to that question is what I have as the last bullet point on this slide. That is the fourth deputy, in other words, prepared the ulama for the major occultation. Right? The ulama need to be prepared for the major occultation. They didn't start telling everybody that, okay, there's a major occultation, this, that, the other. The ulama who are supposed to become the office without an appointed or notified, a head that is notified to the people that the 12th Imam appoints. The ulama are supposed to become that office without the presence of someone that is specifically appointed by the Imam in the way that it happened in the minor occultation. This is supposed to continue. The ulama that are supposed to take on that responsibility need to be prepared for this responsibility. This is what happens during the time of the fourth deputy. The correspondence, the sessions that he has with ulama, with the scholars of the various cities, the letters that are sent are in order to do that and have that communication so that they are prepared. And obviously you hear the letter of the Imam is that from this point onwards we're not going to have someone appointed that we're going to mention the name of. And whoever claims to have seen me prior to the rise of the Sufyani is a liar. And that's an interesting letter or point in that letter that is important. But that announcement coming, it's not that the 12th Imam suddenly left the Shia and the ulama without preparing them and without preparing the ulama for what is to come and their responsibilities during the major occultation. We have various ulama that were in touch with the deputies, one of them being the father of Sheikh As-Saduq, rahmatullah alayh. And by the way, Sheikh As-Saduq, if you haven't heard, was born through the dua of the 12th Imam. The father sent a letter. In a letter, he asked the deputy to ask the Imam to pray that he has a son because he wasn't having a child. The Imam told him that through the letter that you will have a child and he will be helping Islam, and he was very proud of that. So that's what we have in regards to the fourth deputy. And going to the next slide, now we want to talk a little bit about what the enemy did. The first thing to note is we need to recognize there was an enemy. For whoever has any doubts regarding that or is not thinking of that or not considering that, to know there is an enemy and to see what they're doing is always important for various reasons. It gives you the full picture. You're not in a bubble, okay? And that goes for this time as well, right? Some people don't want to acknowledge the existence of enemies for Islam. If you don't want to see that, while the reality is there are enemies of Islam, your decisions will be in a bubble that you've created in your own head. They're not going to be real, and they're not going to be, meaning your judgment of what is happening is not going to be real. Some of the analysis we see about what's happening in the world is flawed very seriously because it doesn't acknowledge there being people that are actively working against Islam. You need to, that's a reality. See that reality, analyze what's happening globally based on that reality, see what the different places, that's what the enemies are doing. Okay, what are the believers doing? Anyone doing anything or not doing anything? Analyze with that full picture. During that time as well, the enemies are at work. They're doing things. When you're looking at the history of the Imams, and you see things, you pick up things in the accounts regarding what's happening in the Shia community, questions coming forth, and so on and so forth, you can't analyze that without realizing and recognizing the element of there being a powerful enemy that is working against the movement of the Imams, and at that time the movement of the 12th Imam. You can't analyze it without recognizing that, okay? So what we're covering here is a little bit of what they did, some of the main highlights of what they did. The first bullet point here is, what are they doing? Transforming the Shia into just another sect. Okay. There were many sects amongst Muslims. They didn't care. In fact, some accounts, and there is an analysis that seems to have sufficient proof, they introduced ideologies within the Muslim community. One example that I'm referring to is translating Greek philosophy books into Arabic. The Greeks are no longer there. You know, for the most part, at least for a good amount of time, the Western world dependent on the translations of the Greek works to Arabic to know what the Greeks had said, because they couldn't find them. Then later on, apparently they said they found original sources. And I don't know how reliable that is. They do. Academia says they did, but I'm not fully convinced. I haven't studied it thoroughly, but there's reasons for me to doubt that. But anyhow, those works were translated during the time, these later periods of the Ahlul Bayt, around Imam al-Rida onwards time, salamullah alayhim ajma'in. They introduced new ideologies. Oh, you guys be this sect, that sect, all kinds of different sects and different views, different beliefs. Who cares? Okay. It's one of the ways of dividing people, by the way. You have these various sects. The problem with the Shia amongst all these various sects, the problem with the Shia is that they are united under a leadership that creates problems for this authority. That's a big problem for them. It's not just another sect. Like, okay, this guy is Mu'tazili, that guy is Ash'ari, that guy is this, that other person is, what are they called? The Mufawwidha, this guy is this. No, it's not. Like, once you become an Imami, once you become a Shia, once you become whatever the title at the time or today you want to use, then this is an organized group of people. Money is being transported, a big thing. You know how people, I don't know if you've dealt with, how many of or some of you here, I don't need to see any show of hands, but whoever's dealt with khums, you realize that you're always on, very, very careful. There was a time where people thought, and maybe it was said, that you need to take the khums of your marja to that marja. And we had a lot of issues that were happening, right? The transfer of money, it alarms the authorities that are not with you. It really alarms people. That becomes a serious issue. Now, this idea of khums being transferred and given to the imam or spent in where the imam says a whole lot of money is circulating in or under the guidance of this one man called the imam, who is openly against the establishment. For those who don't know, all the imams were openly against the establishment. That's why they were martyred. Otherwise, there's no other reason. Okay, if they were doing their thing, then you guys, have fun with what you're doing. We have our khums. We'll take care of this. No, the reason is they're openly against them, and then they have all this money, all these supporters, like within even the government. During the time of, I believe it's Imam al-Hadi, salamullah alayhi, the 10th Imam. One of the main figures in the Abbasid palace and in the Abbasid hierarchy, is a person that actually believes in the Imam. The account says the Imam wanted to visit him. This man lined up his servants from the entrance to the main hall. The Imam walked in, and then where he was sitting, he stood up and gave the best position to the Imam and sat before him as a slave sits before his master. Okay? And then some of his servants came and tapped on his back and said, "You know who is coming," referring to the Khalifa, the Abbasid Khalifa. He's part of the hierarchy of the Abbasids. They tap on his back, "You know who is coming." He says, okay, he just sits there, he doesn't move out of respect. After a little bit of time, he says, "I apologize, you know, if you can please go to the back room." The Imam goes to the back room, and that person comes. You don't see any of that respect. None of that happens. And the person leaves. The Imam is out again. You see, within the government of the Abbasids, you have people. This is not Imam Kadhim's times. If you've heard that, that's a whole different story. If you heard of Ali ibn Yaqtin and his story, that's a whole different context. There's a different reason for why that happens. Okay, this is another These are not. Just to briefly mention the difference, where we see this is even more dangerous, and this is why they're so scared. Ali ibn Yaqtin's time is when a lot of people who were in favor of the Ahlul Bayt jumped on the bandwagon of the Abbasids, thinking the Abbasids are the Ahlul Bayt. Eventually it became clear they're not the Ahlul Bayt that they were thinking of. They are the family of the Prophet, but they're not the Ahlul Bayt they're thinking of. Okay, so these people had joined the Abbasid government. They were there, then they realized the wrong of it. Then they joined Imam al-Kadhim. Then they're in contact. Then he starts telling them to perform this way or the other way. It's not like the Imam told this person to start making his way up. No, he was already there. He was already there. These people, again, the Imam didn't tell him to go way up there. The point is, someone that doesn't have that background has switched his ideology to a great degree. I don't want to say he was an Ithna Ashari. I really don't know. It's not enough proof for me to say he's Ithna Ashari. But you see the contrast between the behavior towards the Khalifa and the Imam. His heart is with the Imam to whatever degree you see in this account. On that level, and when his heart is there, God knows what type of support he's giving the companions of the Imam. Those details you're not going to find them in books of history because it's all hidden. Right? It's all done in secrecy. So being a Shia, the movement of this sect is not just another sect. This is a danger. All that money circulating for causes that they're not aware of. Possibly in their heads, the Imam preparing a military. These were things they said. Harun al-Rashid mentioned this. His son asked him, Harun al-Rashid gave all this money to this other person, and then the Imam came. And Harun gave him a little bit of money in Medina. If I remember correctly, it was Harun. Gave him a little bit of money while the Imam purposely, not lying, but purposely acted as though he needs money, just to make a point here. He said, "Yeah, I have this problem, that problem, and so on and so on. A lot of people in my family, business is not good," speaking in that way. And then the Khalifa gives him only a little bit. His son, which is one of the next Khalifas, I was concerned, why did the other person came in, he was well off, you gave him a ton of money. This guy came in, he's struggling, you gave him barely anything. He asked his dad, why does this happen? He said, because every penny I give this man is going to be a sword against us in Khurasan. That's their perception. That's what their understanding is. They're afraid. These guys are going to make a military, at some point attack us, do this, do that. The same way they check me twice in the airport. For what? For bombs. What are you afraid of? Where am I going to hide this bomb? You checked me once at the checkpoint. Now before entering the plane, you want to check me the whole process all over again. Where could I find a bomb in the airport? They wanted to transform Shia into just another sect. How do they want to do this? Through the deputies and scholars, which is why they imprisoned the third deputy and tried to have other deputies to replace the real ones. So these are two different things. So how are you going to change this sect? The Imam, they are not clear there is one. They hear different accounts. They can't, they're just making it up. They don't know. It's not clear. We said that. They did a good job. The 12th Imam, the 11th Imam, the 12th Imam, the other people with them, working under them, they did a really good job. The authorities, for the most part, were never convinced there is anyone to worry about. The ones they see that they need to worry about is, we thought we killed their Imam, it's done, that lineage doesn't have a child, but unfortunately for them, in their mind, it's still there. And now they are working with these people, Uthman ibn Saeed, Muhammad ibn Uthman ibn Saeed, and the same thing is happening. The same fear is there. They're threatened in the same exact way. So during this period, because they tried doing those things prior to the minor occultation. During the minor occultation, the way you're going to do that, as they did with regards to the Imams during their presence. So you know how many times they tried to either bribe or threaten the Imams to stop this. Imam al-Rida was taken to Marw to either bribe him, threaten him, control him, give the wrong impression of who he is to the people. Various different ways of trying to get the Imams to stop this. Now the Imam is in there. Who do they see as the go-to person? As the deputies. If you want to change this movement, as you see these people are connected, it all comes from the leaders, this office, the deputies. So two things we've written here. One thing we said earlier as well, again, going back to the point, said, look, remember there are the enemies. It's not just opportunists. Remember we said at the beginning of the occultation, you had people that presented themselves as the deputies of the Imam. You can't understand that in a bubble without realizing you have enemies that don't care. If we think that the Abbasis just don't care, like, oh, they just don't care. If you realize they do care, okay, there's a problem here. There is a problem. There is no Imam. Then they say this is the go-to person. If you want to take the movement off the rails and the direction that it's on, one of the ways is to switch that. Have another person as a representative that we can control. Jafar is one of those. He was a spy of the authorities, and now he's claiming to be the Imam. That didn't catch on. The Shia didn't accept that. Now he's claiming to be the deputy, but then there's a few other people that do that as well. It's not just some random opportunists just decided they want to do this. You have to recognize there's an enemy that's actively trying to stop the direction of this movement. That's one thing that happens, and it's not the only instance. That was one case of it that we mentioned. We have accounts regarding. And the other one is the imprisonment of Hussein ibn Ruh. I said we're going to come back to Hussein ibn Ruh, and this is, they imprisoned him for a while. Hussein ibn Ruh was in prison. What is the purpose of that? Now, there's no declaration made by the Abbasids about why they did that. We can analyze though. We can think, why in the world would they do that? Did he commit a crime? Yes, his crime is this. That whole movement that they've been fearing, they've had trouble with, they've tried to divert from the direction they have, change their direction and so on and so forth, isn't working. And at this point, the figurehead is Hussein ibn Ruh. We got to do something. If Imam Al-Kadhim is being imprisoned as the one they see, so there's, from our perspective, we have a ma'soom Imam, then you have the deputy, then you have ulama. From their perspective, they don't consider any of them to be ma'soom. It's just at one point it's Ja'far, the next day it's Musa ibn Ja'far, this time now it's Hussein ibn Ruh. They don't believe any of them to be ma'soom. We know one of them is ma'soom, the other one is not ma'soom. But from their perspective, there's a movement. At some point, it's Musa ibn Ja'far. Now it's Hussein ibn Ruh. This is the figurehead. They imprison. So the imprisonment is for the same reason. Like, stop this. They want to disconnect. They want to stop the relationship. They want to bribe. They want to threaten, change the direction of the movement from being what it is to just another sect. And the other major thing that happens, the enemy does, is creating doubt in regards to the birth and existence of the Imam of our time. Again, when you don't consider this, one of the common things that I'm guilty of is when you look back at the history of the minor occultation itself, but more the beginning of the major occultation, you see that there are accounts that talk about widespread doubt amongst the Shia in regards to the 12th Imam. What are these accounts? read the intro of the book Kamaluddin wa Tamamun Ni'mah. Sheikh As-Saduq, who is one of the first generation scholars after the minor occultation. Okay, he wrote this book. It's 2 volumes. The print we have today is generally a 2-volume print. It's called Kamaluddin wa Tamamun Ni'mah. Okay, the perfection of the deen and the completion of the religion. In other words, it's referring to the verse of the Quran, Al-Yawm Akmaltu Lakum Dinakum, Imamah, basically. He says, I wrote this because so many doubts and questions from the Shia came my way, I needed to clarify to the Shia regarding this. Well, if you're coming out of the minor occultation with all the measures taken, it should be clear to you, you shouldn't have doubts. Okay? Where are these doubts coming from? Well, they're coming from the enemies. They are pumping in, just like today, like where are all these doubts coming from? A brother from Iraq told me this last time, when he was talking to me, this is maybe a year ago, hey, this last time I went, I was surprised, I get in the cab, there's somebody, one youth, starts asking me questions, and then the whole direction of the talk goes in the direction of what? Why do we even follow Maraja? What's Marja'iyya? Where did this come from? The Iraqi Shias were the strongest supporters of Marja'iyya. Why are these youth starting to have these doubts about why in the world should we even follow Marja'iyya? Is this natural? There's an outside element that is injecting this doubt. Realize you've got enemies that are doing this. Okay. At that time, these doubts are in regards to, do we even have the Imam? Is this really the case? Sheikh As-Saduq talks about widespread doubt. Sheikh At-Tusi writes about widespread doubt. This is later on. This is Sheikh At-Tusi passes away in 450 of the Hijri calendar. So that's about, so Sheikh As-Saduq passes away in 386 roughly of the Hijri calendar. So you see there's about a 70-year gap between them. That's between these 2 times. Sheikh As-Saduq writes this one book. Sheikh At-Tusi still talks about widespread doubt. And prior to Sheikh As-Saduq, there's another scholar, Al-Nu'mani. He also writes a book on Al-Ghayba, and he talks about widespread doubt. These are major books entirely on the topic. Then Sheikh Mufid has a few articles regarding it. He points out doubts and others as well. This is not natural. These are injected. They are doubts that are created by the enemies of the Ahlul Bayt to get them to stop following this leadership that they have, so that they become just another sect. So the authorities can do whatever they want, and these people will just do whatever they want. They won't get in their way. Now, a few points regarding the major occultation. After studying it at the end, we have a couple points that we want to make in regards to the major occultation. The first is the conditions are very similar. The more you read about the minor occultation and compare to the major occultation, you will realize that these 2 times are very similar, as opposed to thinking that they're very different. Because our understanding is that these are 2 very different times. And I want to stress that that isn't very accurate. They are very similar. Okay, they're very similar. The Imam being seen is something that happened at that time. It has happened during this time as well, and it will continue to happen during this time. This is something I insist is necessary for us to know. In order to do that, I need to clarify something you've all heard and I mentioned in this session. I need to talk about that. That saying of the last letter of the Imam, whoever claims to have seen me prior to the rise of the Sufyani is a liar. Okay. What do we do with that? Is that not from the Imam? And if it is from the Imam, then how can we claim for people to see the Imam? There's 2 things I want to say. One, Imam al-Sadiq salamullah alayhi said, and I already quoted this hadith, but I want to in this context mention it. Imam al-Sadiq, before the occultation, told us there will be 2 occultations. In the first, khassatu shi'atih will know his whereabouts. In the second, khassatu awliya'ih will know his whereabouts. According to Imam al-Sadiq, in a legitimate hadith, in both occultations, people that are very close to the Imam are going to know his whereabouts. So there are going to be people that will be seeing the Imam. And this is not about before or after a Sufyani. It has nothing to do with that. Throughout this time, there will be people. But, so he is being seen. He was being seen. That's clear. The saying or that letter of the Imam says, the writing says, whoever claims to have seen me before the rise of the Sufyani. So claims to have seen. Somebody seeing the Imam is one thing. Coming out and claiming they have seen the Imam is another thing. So the first point we mentioned says, okay, even if they didn't come out and say we saw the Imam, there are people that see the Imam. That's the least we can accept. But the second point we're trying to make here is two things, or 2 points, second and third, related to those who do claim. Because we do have claims of the Imam being seen, people having seen the Imam, in the even relatively early days of the major occultation. Okay. So we have to deal with two things. One is about those claims. Ulama seem to have accepted some of those claims. And some of those claims are actually made by ulama. For example, there's a common, I haven't seen the account myself, but a number of credible ulama have mentioned this. I trust that they saw it in a credible book that they're mentioning it. I didn't search for it. A number of credible ulama, it's very commonly said. And that is with Shaykh al-Mufid, rahmatullah alayh. It is said that Shaykh al-Mufid was a marja. In today's terms would use that term. They didn't used to use that term at the time. And people refer to him for ahkam. A person comes to him and says, my wife passed, she passed away, she was pregnant. What am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to take the baby out and bury her, or am I supposed to bury her as is? And apparently, he said, you need to bury her. You can't. You're not allowed to take the baby out. Okay. He goes, and then later on, a few years later, the man comes back with a child and thanks Shaykh al-Mufid for saving the life of this child. He says, your fatwa, the person you sent to tell me, no, you need to take the baby out, saved the life of this baby, because we didn't know if the baby's alive or not. You said not to check, not to try to take the baby out. And so she would have been buried. This child would have been buried with the mother. But because you sent that person to clarify, we took the baby out and the baby was alive. And here's the baby. I brought him or her, I forget that detail. The child is now here. And he says, I didn't send anyone. I didn't send anyone. And so then he closes, he shuts down. He says, my fatwa would have killed this person. I don't know who sent that but my fatwa would have taken the life of an innocent person. He just said, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm not going to give any more fatwas. I gave a wrong fatwa. I shouldn't. This is taqwa, right? This is taqwa. You don't start saying, well, mistake, this, that. No, he's like, well, he feels guilty. Like, I did something that would have killed this innocent child. It was wrong fatwa. Whoever saved the life, it wasn't me. I know I didn't send anybody. And afterwards, apparently, he receives something from the 12th Imam. Now, I'm not sure, because when you say receiving something from the 12th Imam, somehow, one way or another, somebody must have seen the Imam. Otherwise, finding a note somewhere isn't going to be a strong enough proof that this is from him. But it is said that he received a letter from the 12th Imam saying that, Shaykh al-Mufid, you do your job, we'll do our job. You do your thing, we'll do our thing. Okay, you continue. No, open your door and give your fatwa. If there's anything that needs to be fixed up, we will take care of you. So we have such accounts, and then others who said they saw the 12th Imam. Regarding that period, I don't insist on saying that people did actually see the 12th Imam. There are some accounts, if you accept them. How is that? If anyone is to justify that or to explain that in light of this particular account, how do we accept that? One explanation that has been given, you can think if it makes sense to you, then you can accept those accounts because credible people have said them. And if you don't have any reason for them to not be valid, you accept them. That's how it works. So the explanation is that the letter that says, whoever claims to have seen me prior to the rise of the Sufyani is a liar, is referring to anyone claiming to have seen him in a way that they're trying to promote that the view of the 12th Imam is whatever it may be. Okay. So, in other words, since the deputy is told to release this letter, it's something close to anyone claiming to be something like a deputy of the 12th Imam. Not just seeing the Imam for once and receiving a miracle from the Imam, which some of the accounts have that. One explanation is that's what it means, not this. In other words, the Imam doesn't deny that he will appear and people will see him on short accounts to deliver a miracle or some other service. He doesn't deny that. If that explanation makes sense to you, then it makes sense to you. You can accept those accounts. If it doesn't, the other thing that is maybe more important, I feel is more important, is that the saying says, whoever claims to see me before the rise of the Sufyani is a liar. So it's very clear, after the rise of the Sufyani, it's possible for there to be claims to see the 12th Imam. That makes it that much more important for us to figure out what the Sufyani is, what the rise of the Sufyani is, and then see if it has happened or when it happens. Then, if anyone claims to have seen the 12th Imam, we're not going to deny it, because the Imam said, if anyone claims to have seen him before the rise of the Sufyani. My understanding, which I think I presented in my last visit here, in I think it was Muharram or Safar, a few months ago that I came, I presented on the minbar. I'll repeat very briefly, though I tried to give more details. The rise of the Sufyani is a rise of kufr, rise of kufr, power and authority of kufr is called the Sufyani because it makes reference to Abu Sufyan. Abu Sufyan was the leader of the kuffar of Mecca, the leader of the enemies outside of the circle of Muslims that fought from the outside, Muslimin, the Prophet, and not a munafiq inside. Afterwards, he supposedly became Muslim, he's a munafiq and what have you. That's not the Abu Sufyan you're talking about. We're talking about Abu Sufyan as a symbol of enmity against Islam. Okay. The rise of the Sufyani is the rise of the power of kufr. There was a time that kufr went down, the kufr of the Persian Empire, the Roman Empire, they all could not withhold under the pressure of the Islamic Empire. The Muslims were on the rise. The Muslims were the ones that were more civilized. They were developing technologies. They were the ones that were running the show. The kuffar generally could not dare get close to the Muslims for many centuries. Then there's the decline of the power of the Muslims and the rise of a power from the West, more particularly, that is not a Christian power. This is post-Renaissance. Renaissance is departing from Christianity, departing from theism, moving towards atheism, okay? The separation of church and state, so power becomes something that is a-religious. We're no longer going to be religious. There's a rise of power from that part of the world, okay? That is the rise of the Sufyani. I try to elaborate more why I think that. This is my understanding. I present that. You think about it. What I say, I repeat, is that whether you accept this or not, go figure out for yourself what the Sufyani is. Because according to the account, after the rise of the Sufyani, if people that are credible claim to have seen the 12th Imam, that claim should be accepted. You don't have a reason against it any longer. The way I see it, the claims of Bahr al-Ulum, for example, in Najaf, frequently seeing the Imam is post-rise of the Sufyani. We don't have any reason against that. It is commonly said Bahr al-Ulum used to see the Imam very frequently. This is post-industrial revolution, post-Renaissance and the rise of the power of kufr from the West. So, we were trying to explain the similarities. One was seeing the Imam. The Imam is seen on all these different scales, and now maybe more than before. The idea of the office, we tried to elaborate on that and explain that the office was not just one deputy. There was a period where there was an appointed head post that period, and within that period, the office included others, which were pious ulama. And after that, there wasn't an appointed head. The office was supposed to function with the purification and the knowledge that was granted and the spiritual status that was given to them. They were supposed to function on their own. That office remains, which is the office of pious ulama and marja'iyya and so on and so forth. Our direction is the same. Okay, our direction is the same. It's not like the direction that the Shia was headed toward during the minor occultation and the direction that we're headed towards during the major occultation has changed. Okay. Whatever it was, and think about that. I didn't really talk about that. Maybe there needs to be sessions regarding that. But think about it, the direction of the Shia. What is our direction? Okay. In fact, I should maybe say this. What is the direction? Is there a change of direction between the period prior to the minor occultation and the minor occultation itself? Is there a change? And the answer is no. The tactics are different. Seeing the Imam or not seeing him, the Imam is different. But the direction of the Imam has not changed. It's not like he was headed in the direction of spreading Islam globally and establishing with the will of the people and the choice of the people, supporting Islam, a government of justice. Up to that point, that was his goal. From that point onwards, it changed. Okay, we're going to remain dormant. We're going to just do nothing. We're going to be idle. We're going to wait for a time that things just start happening on their own. We don't have any taklif. Well, that's not what happened. From the period of the 11 earlier Imams into the minor occultation, the direction didn't change. The tactics, maybe some strategies, if we can call it that, changed. The direction, we're still moving in the same direction, and then in the major occultation as well, we have the same direction that has been outlined by the Quran and the sayings of the Prophet and the Ahlul Bayt, including the Imam of our time, including all of the du'as that he has given us and all the hadith that the previous Imams and the Prophet gave us in regards to the 12th Imam. And you've all heard it, which is to eradicate injustice and to establish justice in the globe. That's something that you've repeatedly heard. That was the direction, remains the direction, and it's the direction of not just the Imam of the Shia, it's the direction of the Imam as the Imam, which means that the followers are supposed to follow that direction. And last point is the enemies are doing the same things as well. The enemies are trying to get people within the office of the Imam, ulama in other words, to deviate from this path. They have done that within the Sunni world. I don't know how many of you have heard because Muslims are a threat to, when we're talking about within the Muslim world, the followers of the Ahlul Bayt and the Khalifa of the time, okay, it becomes those who understand and they are Shia. The rest of the Muslims are clueless regarding that. But when we're talking about kufr outside of the Muslim world and Islam, all of them become dangerous. It doesn't matter whether you're Sunni or Shia. Kuffar have that problem with us. You've heard about the development of Wahhabism. Wahhabism is a clear example of deviating the Muslims from the direction they have to a completely different direction. Muslimin were fighting colonial powers one way or another, Shia or Sunni. They created Wahhabism. Wahhabis started killing Muslims instead of fighting the kuffar. That's what they want. And then when they took control, oil, we are under you guys. We will sell it by the dollar. We will help you establish the dollar as the international currency because of that. And all the other things that they have done through a sect created by Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, someone who is from a family of ulama. His father is a scholar, his brother is a scholar. Neither of them agreed with him. But he was someone that they saw potential in, deviated him, got a whole bunch of Muslims to follow that direction. Up to today, they are the ones responsible to spread their version of Islam so that they can control Muslims. The same tactics are being used. The doubts that you hear in regards to the Ahlul Bayt having ilmul ghayb, being imams that are guided by God, not just an alim. No, the 14 ma'sumeen are different. A marja, okay, he studies the words of the imams and he's supposed to come up with his understanding. He may make a mistake. He does his best, and this other marja has another view. The third marja has another view. Okay, we still go to them because the Ahlul Bayt told us to go to them, and that's the only viable option, and so on and so forth. But to attack the status that the Shia believes in regards to the Ahlul Bayt it's right, attacking it at the roots. You're cutting the roots. If the Shia stops believing that the Ahlul Bayt and the Imams are divine leaders that are at a spiritual level, connection with Allah, on a level that they have wilaya takwini, they have knowledge of the unseen, the way you're going to trust those words and do as it says, follow the letter of the word and the letter of the law, you'll do it one way. But when you start coming to the conclusion that they were people just like us, they were pious, they were good, well, there's people just like us, then there's room that maybe this statement is wrong. Maybe this is outdated. They didn't know change is going to happen. This was pre-modern. Once you say this is from God, God spoke through Ali ibn Abi. Whatever he says is God's word. Whatever Imam Sadiq says is God's word. Whatever Imam Al-As Jalallah Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif says is God's word. Well, they knew change is going to happen. The 12th Imam has been with us during the process of this change. They've constantly said the rules don't change. The direction doesn't change. The office doesn't change. A Shia that believes that is going to behave one way, but if you think that, no, maybe they weren't all that, you'll start behaving a different way. You can move in a different. These doubts are similar to the doubts they were creating in regards to the 12th Imam during the minor occultation. Doubts in regards to the office of the 12th Imam, pious ulama in general, not necessarily this person or the other person. The movement of akhbarism that has popped up and creeped up on us over the last couple decades is a creation of the enemies of Islam. It's not natural. There's a natural movement post-revolution where Muslimin in general, Shia in particular, are referring to their maraja more. Back in the days, there wasn't as much communication. People did not see them as much. They didn't hear about them because of the revolution. There's this explosion, this big bomb almost exploding. Everybody starts saying, hey, we need to do this. Who do you follow? Who do you not follow? Taqleed becomes a big issue. People start following the maraja. And therefore, the offices start growing. Then you start seeing offices of maraja in Europe, in America. All this starts happening. And then suddenly you see, a couple of decades after that happens, the natural order of things should have been that should have become stronger because that's being promoted and there's nothing going against it. Well, you start seeing that this new idea is starting to crop up amongst the Shia that starts attacking the idea of marja'iyah. Oh, who said we need... No, there's this book that says taqleed is haram. Oh, this hadith says taqleed is haram. Sheikh Saduq said taqleed is haram. I was surprised. Like, what the heck? This was 2008, the first time I was shocked by this in Toronto, Canada. And I looked into it, like, oh, akhbarism is starting to be a relatively big thing. Of course, it makes a lot of noise more than anything else. And then I was able to find the source of it. Robert Gleave in Exeter University, that is the source of akhbarism cropping up in the Shia world. The British shuffled through our books, found something that they can work on, misinterpret, and tell people and start pushing people away from taqleed, away from the office of marja'i, away from listening to, spreading lies in regards to who the maraja are, who the leadership is. All these lies that are being spread, they are spread by the enemies of Islam because they see how the Shia is united behind all these great ulama. Ayatollah Sistani gives a fatwa, Ayatollah Khamenei supports his troops. They go there, give them arms, train them. Together they get rid of this big problem of Daesh that they created to destroy Iraq. They created it, they announced it, they mentioned it, Trump mentioned it, Hillary Clinton mentioned it, John McCain mentioned it. It's all recorded, you can find it online if it wasn't already clear to you. They created Daesh to destroy, but they see, oh, we made all these plans. Ulama are working together. No, we have to go and say, no, this alim hates that alim. If you're following this alim, then you're not going to like that one. Well, the office of the imam is the collection of these ulama. Okay? Any pious alim is going to be there. Yeah, if they're not pious, it's a whole different thing. We're talking about the pious ones. You give these examples. Well, there's an issue here, so we're going to have to say, no, this guy hates that guy's against this guy. Some Shias discredit that alim, some other Shias discredit this alim. Overall, everybody's being discredited. This guy says that guy's after money, that guy says this guy's after money. Doubts, confusion, you no longer trust the office of the 12th Imam. And what you end up, if that was to work, if it worked, then they would have this religion just like Hinduism. Hinduism is different than whatever other ism or ideology or religion you'll find in the West, that they've already tamed all of that. Okay? Hinduism is a completely different thing. They have their ways. I just heard yesterday that one of the biggest exporters of beef in the world is a Hindu nation. Well, I thought based on your belief, you're not supposed to do that. If you want to stick to your belief, you got to do what you believe in. But no, while they're Hindu, they become the biggest exporters of beef, working against their own religion. You can be whatever you want to call yourself, as long as the order we define in the world, with whatever color of the rainbow you have, you're still within that paradigm, you're good. Problem with Islam is, especially the Shia, is they don't want to fall in line. They don't want to get in line. They want to get in line behind their imam under the office of the 12th Imam. They got to create doubts, attribute lies, try to produce their own version of marja'iyah. They're doing that, by the way, as well. There's a call to certain individuals in Britain, in Canada, in the US. I'm not referring to just anyone who claims marja'iyah, but there's certain ones, there's clear signs that while that person is an opportunist, this idea is backed by the British government. Working against and trying to preach the idea that, we respect the Maraja in Najaf, in Qom, and so on and so forth, but they don't understand our conditions. We're living out here, they don't know what we're going through. We need to refer to homegrown Maraja, which, by the way, is not a wrong thing as long as they're actual Maraja. Because they're saying, don't follow Ayatollah Sistani because he's in Najaf. Who do you follow? My teacher. Now, who is this guy? Is he a mujtahid? Is he a pious mujtahid? Is he that office of the 12th Imam? No. He's not pious. He doesn't have ijtihad. He has bogus interpretations of the Quran, bogus interpretation of hadith. Reject that, discredit that, follow this guy. The same tactics, same types of things that they did in the minor occultation, they're doing the major occultation as well. And I found that the more I studied that minor occultation period, it helped me understand this period and our direction, what the enemy does, and what to expect and how to feel. I'll end with this. Brothers and sisters, we have to feel the presence of the 12th Imam. Okay? He is really present on earth. We neglect it because we don't see him, right? It's like, okay, but we need to be reminded and remind ourselves, if we hear it from someone, that's one thing, but we have the task on our hand to do this for ourselves. Through the du'as, these du'as, if you read it, هَلْ إِلَيْكَ يَبْنَ أَحْمَدْ سَبِيلٌ فَتُلْقَى Du'a Nudba on Friday, read it. Don't just read the Arabic. Try to connect. There's Brother Wasim showed me his presentations for his class for children regarding the Quran, word for word translation. Do that with Du'a Nudba. And let them make connection with the Arabic. Then once you get to know what the words are, read the Arabic. I don't know, for me at least, I'm not an Arab. I don't speak Arabic. Meaning I wasn't raised with that. I can push myself to try to speak a little bit, but I mostly read, okay? And I can understand what I hear. But I haven't practiced speaking. But I wasn't raised with that language, okay? So the languages I'm familiar with, and I can relate to, are English and Farsi. These are the two languages that I know and I was raised with. But when I learned the meanings of the words, I don't know, the Arabic has a different touch for me at least, okay? And that's why I'm recommending that. Read the translation if you think this is helpful to you as well. Get what the words mean, and then when you read the Arabic, when you hear someone reading it, let that connect with your heart and feel that presence. And a good segment of the dua, you're referring to the Imam directly as someone who you're speaking to. He's there. يَبْنَ السَّادَةِ الْمُقَرَّبِينَ يَبْنَ النُّجَبَاءِ الْأَقْرَبِينَ يَبْنَ طَاهَ وَيَاسِينَ. Oh, such and such. Oh, you're referring to him. You're speaking to him directly. At some point, بِأَبِي أَنْتَ وَأُمِّي, may my father and mother be sacrificed for you. You're speaking to someone who's present. You got to feel that presence. This is a reality. To know he was born, he's somewhere. No, he's present right here on earth. Okay. He is really present. Okay? Feeling that presence is very important. It's very effective in building us. We need to repeat this for ourselves. Remind ourselves. There were some I remember before I left Qom, right here in Maryland where we were, there was a, I don't know, maybe he came here as well, Manab Bihishti. He was bilingual Arabic and Farsi. He was raised in Najaf. I don't know if he had it was very cute, had a cute face. He was old, he had a white beard, but he had green eyes, very, very, very good looking, mashallah. And anyway, it's just describing the person. Maybe some of you saw him, because I remember hearing that he came to New York as well. But I saw him there in IEC, Maryland. They were like, encourage, give sadaqah for the Imam on a daily basis. He would say, I would give my child a little, not much, a penny even. It's about doing that, right? That helps you remember, look, this is when you give sadaqah not for the dead, you give sadaqah for what? To protect the living. That's what you give the sadaqah for, with that understanding. These are reminders, the Imam is there, I don't know where you are, but I want to give this sadaqah to pray for your safety, and I'm concerned about that. This is important. We got to feel that, we got to want that. And inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala helps us develop that. I apologize for all the shortcomings, especially, again, my style of doing slides is probably very different than what you're familiar with. I hope I am able to pick up the right style of whatever shortcoming was there or in my explanations. Please forgive me. And let's end with Dua al-Faraj, inshallah. And then if there's any questions, maybe if you have anything, we can address. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Ilahi a'zum al-bala وبرح الخفاء وانكشف الغطاء وانقطع الرجاء وضاقت الأرض ومنعت السماء وأنت المستعان وإليك المشتكى وعليك المعول في الشدة والرخاء اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد أولي الأمر الذين فرضت علينا طاعتهم وعرفتنا بذلك منزلتهم ففرج عنا بحقهم فرجا عاجلا قريبا كلمح البصر أو هو أقرب يا محمد يا علي يا علي يا محمد اكفياني فإنكما كافيان وانصراني فإنكما ناصران يا مولانا يا صاحب الزمان الغوث 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 أدركني 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 الساعة 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 العجال 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 يا أرحم الراحمين بحق محمد وآله الطاهرين. Within the Shia, or there are those who believe that chaos needs to happen, and therefore we should not stop it from happening, and that I haven't seen anyone, at least openly say that we think we need to create that chaos. There's an organization called Anjuman Hujjatiyya in Iran. I've heard there's a similar organization, meaning name is similar, in India, in Mumbai or Bombay, or whatever the name of that city is. I've heard, I don't know too much about it, so I don't want to, because I don't know that group or that organization, I want to make sure I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about the one that's in Iran. It started out before the revolution. A particular scholar was involved in that. They had a couple of schools. They still are around, and unfortunately, their views are pretty deviant. One of the main views that they had was that we should not get involved with eradicating injustice. We should not stop injustice. We shouldn't stop any wrong. We should just not do injustice ourselves and be pious people. That's it. Anything that happens around us, the Shah is there, the Americans want to kill, Al-Aamri is being killed, ISIS is there, don't do anything. That's what they used to promote. But I never heard or read anywhere saying that they're actively trying to create chaos globally. If there is anyone with that belief in doing it, I'm not aware of it. Talking about right now. No, I think you were talking about an actual group, organization, a group of people, not the one. Yeah, because the riwayah doesn't say there's a group that does it. It says that will be happening. And there's plenty of groups, the U.S. government, the Zionists, the various other governments, they're involved with creating the big mess that we have with us, the ignorance of some people feeding into that, being abused by that. There's lots of players in creating the chaos that we're seeing globally. Mismanagement. The richest parts of the world are having the biggest problem in this pandemic. We should not be having the problems we have, okay? At least in this part of the world. You have enough financial resources and other resources to deal with this. We have countries that don't have these resources that are doing a much better job. You guys are failing at this. This is one example of chaos. Plenty more examples as well. But it doesn't say one particular source, just that this is going to be happening.
All these four Japanese minor organizations, did they die a physical death, like a
Natural death?
or by
No, all of them. None of them were assassinated.
I know you shared some light, but I was still curious, like, how come they didn't face the tyranny from the rulers at that time? Like how Imam would have called. If they were operating office, like, were they not very popular operating office, or they were operating in a...
Good question. I don't think I can say I have a full answer for you. I would have to think more to see what my thoughts are and with the evidence that I've read so far, and perhaps look into it and find further evidence. What comes to my mind off the top of my head as a possibility, you could think about maybe either confirm or reject, and then maybe there's another reason. One thing that is a truth, whether it's related to your question or not, is this. The Imams, during their time, were all assassinated. Every single one of them was killed, and we have hadith on this. We have hadith that every single one of us is either going to be killed by the sword or poison. One way or another, we're going to be killed. We're all shuhada. That lineage was known, and they knew that the source is that during the time of the occultation, they don't have that lineage, and it's scattered. We consider one person to be the deputy, and it is the case that person is the deputy. But because there isn't any historic reference to make to see that this is the one person, similar to the idea of the Imam, okay? They see multiple people as players, and they don't see them to have the same track record or the same influence as the Imam. They didn't. The office of the Imam was kept and so on and so forth. However, it was not seen as the Imam. This was very clear to us. Perhaps this led to them not being attacked in the same way as the Imam. Because they mentioned yesterday, if you remember, there were two attempts. We have upon two attempts of the assassination of the Imam himself. So if that is accurate, which I believe it to be, that means at the same time the deputies were there. And mind you, the same thing, we can continue this discussion in regards to prior to the minor obligation. Because the Imams have assistants. They weren't killed, the Imam was killed. So we have to think about that as well. Whatever answer we have there, we can help us have the answer to this question as well. The same period, the main deputy isn't attacked except for the third deputy being in prison, right? But the 12th Imam himself, there's two attempts of assassination. Tells you that from their perspective at least, okay, for whatever reason, the way they see the Imam, the way they see the deputy, or what we call the office, is not the same. The threat they felt of the Imam and the threat they felt of the office is not going to be the same. Otherwise they would treat them. Later on in the recent years, well, the whole idea of the Imam and stuff, these modern tyrants don't really care what we believe in. They don't think we're right about that. What they see are ulama. There's plenty of assassinations. In Pakistan, in India, Shah-E-Najaf Center in Pakistan, in India, in Iran, plenty of, in Lebanon, Saeed Abbas al-Musawi, in Bahrain, the recent cases, Sheikh Hassan, they would have, they were able to do, and so many other ulama, they're doing this, anywhere where they think they need to and they can. They will do that. Where they think that they shouldn't, or they can't, or they don't need to, it's different. Do that. But at that time, it's clear that they didn't feel the same level of threat from them as they did. Why? I tried to give one thought that came to mind, and that is because of the background, the lineage, and what they had seen from the predecessors of the Imam. They didn't feel the same way. It didn't seem like these people are at the same level. خاصة الشيعة وخاصة أولياء.